Now we are going more into depth into the office furniture market in the UK, as John is the specialist of this market.
Good morning, everyone. I apologize that my French is not good enough to make this presentation in French, but I will try and speak slowly and clearly, and I'm very happy to take questions at any point. As Emmanuel said, my background is office furniture, and I really don't get involved in any other sector at all. But as far as office furniture is concerned, I work internationally and cover many of the world's largest markets. I've had many years' experience as a manufacturer, and since the end of the 1990s, I've been a consultant working in London, traveling the world. I'm lucky enough to be in a city which is very focused on the office furniture sector, and it's entirely concentrated in the London area. I've represented the office furniture industry both in the UK and in Europe, and my own practice, I'm pleased to say, keeps me very busy, as I said, on an international basis. If we look at the UK market, these figures, by the way, do differ slightly from the ones we were looking at before, but they're based upon the information that my firm gathers directly from manufacturers and importers in the UK, and it shows that the market is over the last 2 or 3 years has been moving up steadily. It's almost back to the point it was in 2007 when it reached just over $1 billion GBP. This year the market has improved again. Nobody, of course, has any idea what's going to happen next year, with 1 or 2 unknowns still. As far as the way that the office furniture market works in terms of channels of distribution, it is still a market dominated by indirect sales, which is in many ways somewhat surprising, because geographically the UK is small. The conurbations, the largest centres of commercial activity, are relatively few in number. There are not that many large cities, and it is concentrated in London. So one would think that the larger manufacturers would be tempted to work more on a direct basis with end users, but that isn't strictly the case. Most manufacturers have activities directly with end users, but they also work with distributors of one sort or another. That said, the organizations that resell office furniture are not at all structured. There are many different types of organization that sell office furniture apart from manufacturers. There are traditional dealers, but they are reducing in number, and the activities are very much more with fit-out companies, design and build companies, and main contractors. The reason for that is that I think, and this is true for many markets in the world, that office furniture is seen as being part of a commercial environment, and has become more and more linked to the property element of a commercial building of one sort or another. And the organizations that start with the concept of designing a building or designing a refurbishment like to move the project forward to incorporate office furniture as well as all the other elements of interiors. I've mentioned here not architects. Architects are one of the groups of people that we generally call influencers. They do not, in almost every respect, they do not actually sell office furniture. They tend to restrict themselves to recommending it, specifying it, pointing people in the direction of organizations that will sell them the products that they themselves specify. The public sector for office furniture in the UK is still very substantial. It's estimated to be between 40 and 45% of the total market. And as a sector, it's become, we would say in English, less utilitarian and more in line with private sector offices. There is a group of manufacturers and very large distributors that service the public sector. It's not at all impossible for companies to become, from outside the UK, to become part of that. However, there's a long lead-in time to public sector contracts based upon framework agreements, and that lead time is somewhere often between 3 and 4 years by the time that the companies concerned have managed to introduce themselves to the influencers in that sector and then become accepted, and factory visits have taken place, and then companies have become approved and then get a chance to put themselves forward on the applications that go forward for framework agreements. The UK manufacturers as a whole satisfy about 2/3 of the market, 1/3 coming from outside the UK, and that 1/3 coming from outside the UK is split between two different categories. There are the commodity products coming from China and other low-cost manufacturing areas, but there is also a big element of imports from the USA and Germany and other parts of Europe, where the products are purchased based upon their design and specification and not on their price. The market is very fragmented. There are a large number of UK manufacturers. As this says, that the top 5 manufacturers account for only 25% of the market, and then if you deal with the top 10, it's less than 40%, which means that some of the smaller manufacturers are very active in the market. The fragmentation applies right through the market, not only to the manufacturers but also to the resellers, where again the market is divided amongst a very wide range of sources of distribution. And the market is very London-centric. Reference was made earlier to the number of architects and designers in the UK. Many or the majority of those are in London. In fact, they're not only in London. Many of you will know that there's an area of London, Clerkenwell, which is the heart of the office furniture and contract furniture industry in the UK, where there are well over 100 manufacturers and distributors present, with showrooms. It was originally an area, a very poor area, which has become very well developed. Rents have become extremely expensive. Space is very difficult to find, and it has an effect of meaning that if a company wants to take a reasonable share of the UK market, it's almost de rigueur for it to have a showroom presence in the Clerkenwell area, which makes breaking into the UK market at a serious level very difficult to do, or very expensive at least. One of the reasons for this concentration in that area is because the office furniture companies went into that area following the architects and designers who found appropriate space that they could occupy without at that time it being too expensive. And London has the reputation of being very heavily involved in international property contracts. An earlier speaker was mentioning that they were based in the Middle East and various parts of Europe, but there is also a very strong architectural activity in London for projects in North America, in Australia, and pretty well everywhere in the world. And once the architects and designers are involved in those sort of projects, the manufacturers and the supply chain generally follows them. There's a high level of activity. Typically, a reseller of office furniture now in London will not have a showroom at all. They will rely on manufacturers' showrooms, and their right to be in business is because of the link that they have with either the end user or the specifier, the influencer. And their cri de coeur is to be given a 4 or 5 hour slot, and they put their client in a taxi and they take them around the Clerkenwell area, and within half a day they can see 6, 7, 8 showrooms and achieve a great deal on behalf of their client. The UK market for office furniture is like many other UK markets. It is open-minded. As a nation, we do not have very strong feelings of wanting to buy British. It's of no particular concern to most architects, designers and end users as to where the product is made. And so long as the product is fit for purpose, so long as it meets specifications and looks attractive and passes the necessary European standards and often the environmental standards, then so long as, again, the price is satisfactory, those products will be open-mindedly considered. And this, of course, is part of that requirement is that service levels need to be good. Delivery dates are important, but if the products are being considered for major projects, lead times of 6 to 8 weeks or more are perfectly acceptable and understandable. The market, like many markets in the UK, is not very disciplined. It changes very rapidly, and quite often a major project will be the catalyst for a totally new form of distribution to be considered, where loose partnerships or strategic alliances are created just for a particular project. Perhaps a manufacturer linking with an architect and some form of installation and distribution network. And that partnership or joint venture will work for one project and one project only. before breaking apart. And manufacturers looking to try and have some discipline in the market are fighting an uphill battle, because that's not what the market wants. The market wants complete flexibility. I mentioned about the Clerkenwell area. Many of you will know that there is an exhibition held in the middle of May each year, which over the last few years has become both very popular and very influential. It allows manufacturers that have showrooms in the area to use those showrooms as part of the exhibition, but there are also pop-up showrooms and exhibition centres created out of the strangest types of environment, both inside buildings and in parks and churchyards and all sorts of different sets of premises. It's great fun, and usually that time of the year the weather's very good, so it's a very good atmosphere. The type of product being sold in the UK is changing quite dramatically. The influence of co-working has become something that's dominating the market. The company WeWork, which many of you will know, is now the UK's largest private commercial property occupier, and that applies not only to the UK, but it also applies now to New York and Washington DC. But the type of furniture being used by co-working, not just WeWork, but the dozen or 20 companies that are copying WeWork, are quite different from the conventional office environment that one saw as little as 4 or 5 years ago. And there is quite a strong movement towards or away from conventional, what we think of as conventional office furniture, towards what many think of more as residential furniture, domestic furniture. Shabby chic is the term that tends to get used quite a lot. And it creates an environment which appeals to young people, start-up companies, but also to some larger companies who want to retain flexibility in their commercial space, not wanting to sign property contracts that go on for 10, 15 or 20 years. And they can take space up to 1,000 or even 5,000 workspaces in London at very short notice, and give them up at very short notice as well. One other major change in the market is the way that resellers are working on larger projects and contracts. Some of these led by the lawyers in London, and there are plenty of very large law firms, are looking for resellers to work on what we call open book, where the reseller discloses with complete transparency every aspect of a project in terms of their purchasing cost or their quoted costs and their overheads, and the client is aware fully of exactly how much margin a reseller is making, and that leads to that margin being something that is agreed between the parties, or even goes directly to the buyer, with the reseller taking a fee instead, fee-based projects. That's happened in a number of cases over the last 12 months, with a lot of tears on the way. The resellers don't like that at all, as you can imagine. There is some consolidation going on in the market. Reference was made earlier to the acquisition by Steelcase of the Orange Box company, but there are smaller ones as well, with some of the larger manufacturers wanting to move into the sectors that are becoming more popular, with the type of products that are required by co-working companies. So Herman Miller has bought into a UK company called Naught One, and internationally have bought into the Hay company. Hayworth have bought into Buzzy Space, VDB. The Dutch business has bought a UK company, seating company, Nomiek. And the feeling is that that consolidation will continue for at least the next few months. What are the issues in the market? There's a first one which I've not mentioned there, which is probably the most important, and that is service levels. The industry, and many of you will know this, is not highly regarded for the levels of service it provides. Accuracy of delivery, damages, shortages create a lot of issues with end users and their advisors. And the companies that succeed in the UK market are, like in many other parts of the world, they are the companies that provide a higher level of service. A very good example of that in the UK is the company Elite, which most of you, I don't think, will know. It's not the largest company, but it's consistently successful, and it's by far and away the most profitable company in the market. Last year it returned 33% net on its turnover before tax, which is exceptional, and that was achieved through a combination of quality engineering and service levels. It is highly competitive. Price is not the most important factor in winning most projects, but British buyers will not generally be known for overpaying. Everyone is aware that the Brexit negotiations are coming to some form of conclusion. What they'll actually result in, not many people know, and I certainly don't, and what that's going to mean in terms of the UK market and the way it will develop is an unknown factor. At the moment, manufacturers are following the UK saying, or the English saying, of making hay while the sun shines. The market is strong, very positive, but there's clearly a degree of nervousness about as to whether that is going to continue, and if so, for how long, which would lead to a downturn, which frankly is overdue. The market has been growing steadily since 2012, and it is due for a downturn. The industry, like the same industry in many parts of the world, is cyclical, and we are expecting it to turn down quite soon. That's the only part of my formal presentation. There's one thing I wanted to add, sorry, and that is the influence of the e-commerce, internet selling on the market, which strangely is, not strangely perhaps, it's linked to, at the moment, the parts of the market which are more involved in commodities, where products are easy to choose by way of their specification, and at that level, with products almost all imported, mainly from China, there is a high volume of low-cost products. And in fact, the very largest reseller in the UK market is an online company called Office Furniture Online, which is very successful, recently sold to a German group. But once you get past that first company, the market is more traditional and is based upon relationships with large corporations and large projects. That's the only part of my formal presentation. I'm very happy to answer any questions.